Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Sports and News. 4 years in the making, the first British and Irish Lions test team has been announced for their tour of Australia, and some very big calls being made by Andy Farrell, with one very notable exclusion in no Jack Morgan being named, which has definitely caught a bit of attention from the fans, all saying that he's probably been one of the best players on the tour, and very surprised not to have been involved. As a result, it is the first British and Irish Lions team in the 21st century to be named without a Welsh player in the 23. Just to cap off, another big landmark in a very poor few years for Wales. They did win their first game in almost 2 years over the weekend, so things were looking up there. But unfortunately for them, only one Welsh player on tour not involved in the 23 either. Mario Itoje will start and captain the side. Finn Russell, as expected, is the number 10. That was always going to be one of the big selection calls ahead of the tour, but I think we all kind of knew that he was pretty much nailed on to start in the number 10 jersey, and Andy Farrell has obliged. Before we get into it, please do smash like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. Let's have a look at what we've got, shall we? So, that is the side. And in the front row, Ellis Genge, Dan Sheehan, and Tyke Furlong. And, I think pretty standard. I think we pretty much knew that was going to be the front row. The big sort of question maybe was going to be about whether Andrew Porter was going to start with Ellis Genge on the bench in terms of keeping combinations, in terms of keeping that sort of all-Irish front row type of thing. But I think we kind of more or less knew the top six front rowers, that were going to be involved in the 23. There's certain positions that I think are very hotly contested, and certain positions which I think are far more settled. I think sort of the front rowers were very much. I think Xander Ferguson been involved. I think he would have had a say in that number 3 jersey. I think he's a big miss, to be honest, in the entire tour, but it's a very strong front three. Mario Itoje starts as suspected, and it was a big call to see who was going to start with them, because Ty Byrne can obviously play at 5. You've had Ollie Chesson playing there. Also playing at 6, for example. You've got Scott Cummings, who I think was always going to be more of a midweek player. So they've gone with Joe McCarthy in the number 5. And I'll tell you what, he's had a pretty meteoric rise the last few years, has the youngster. So, he'll be on the next Lions tour, for example. Probably the Lions tour after that as well. Looking very comfortable as Joe McCarthy at international level. One of the big selections is always going to be the back row. Who was going to be your number 6? Were you going to go with a Ty Byrne, an Ollie Chesson, a very big ball carrier? Who's going to be the number 8? You had Ben Earl versus Jack Conan. Henry Pollard, doesn't he make the 23? So they've gone with Ty Byrne, Jack Conan, which I think was more or less kind of almost expected. I don't think it's a surprise pick. Tom Curry going in the number 7. I think what, for me, this back row very much shows is this was probably almost pre-picked. Ahead of the tour, they probably had an idea of what the test team would be. You probably actually find they got a test team. Andy Farrell probably had a test team on a whiteboard, and he's saying, right now, this is my 23, and on the tour, there's opportunities to move and around. Because I think that Tom Curry had a brilliant Six Nations and really reminded everybody what he's all about. I just can't look past Jack Morgan in terms of what he's done on the tour. Whenever he's come on, he's been absolutely brilliant. He's had one of the man-of-the-match performances. He's played quite a lot during the tour, but he's been phenomenal. He's probably been, for me, top 2-3 best players on tour so far. So to not make the 23 and to not even start is a very big surprise to me. I would have had him in the number 7 jersey. I actually thought a few years ago, I thought he had British and Irish Lions captain written all over him until he had those injury issues. But his comeback was the Welsh best player by a country mile, deserves place in the squad, and I think would deserve a place in the starting lineup. So that, for me, I think Tom Curry's got a big thing to prove, or a lot to prove on Saturday, because I think that, also got Josh van der Flair, who's been left out, a former World Player of the Year. But it shows you how hotly contested that back row in particular is for the British and Irish Lions. If we move to the backs, Gibson Park next to Finn Russell, we knew this was pretty much going to be the combination as they went on tour. It's a very exciting combination. It was far more sort of attention, I think, being given to the back 3 and the centres rather than the 9-10. Gibson Park, arguably the form number 9 in World Rugby this year. Finn Russell, one of the top 3 best fly halves in the world, and definitely the best fly half on tour. In fact, I always go back to the 2021 tour to South Africa, and I always say, I think if Finn Russell played the second and third test, second test and then the full third test, I think that British and Irish Lions could have potentially done a job on the Springboks, because I think that he changed the way they played when he gave. And then in the centres, I think they've gone with the right thing. They've gone combinations. They've gone with the 10, 12, 13 access, all Scottish access, and they've gone with Sione Tupolotto next to Hugh Jones. Now, Gary Ring was injured, which meant that Hugh Jones was quite an easy pick. But for me, Hugh Jones was always going to start in number 13. He's been brilliant on tour. And then I think Tupoloto gets the best out of Hugh Jones. You got to go with combinations. Very tempted to go with Bundy Aki next to Hugh Jones. They tried Bundy Aki next to Tupoloto. There was a lot of hype about it. They were sitting there saying, look at this centre combination. How's that for power? It didn't work. And I think it shows you that it's not just about putting, maybe your top two centers going into the tour or two big physical players and saying, well, there we go. They're going to work together. It's about combinations. And that's kind of what the entire tour has been about, establishing those combinations, getting players playing with each other and used to playing with each other. So I think they've gone with the right thing of going with the Tupoloto next to Hugh Jones. That whole Tupoloto combo works so well. They play at club level together. They play at Scotland together. And they formed a duo, which is probably one of the most iconic duos. I mean, after that, I think the next most iconic duo in the midfield is probably, your Jesse Creel, Damien De Allendis, which are the duo. But I think Tupoloto generally, I think when they're top, they can change a game in that midfield. Then the back three, James Lowe, I think with that left boot option was always going to be a strong contender. And Tommy Freeman's been such good form this year. He goes to number 14 jersey. Blair Kinghorn would have been, for me, probably a nailed-down starter for that 15 had he not had the injury issues. Hugh Keane is an interesting pick. Apparently, he's been quite sick in the camp, lost a bit of weight, not been at full fitness. It'll be interesting to see how he goes in the match itself. And then in terms of the bench, Ronan Kelleher, Andrew Porter, and Will Stewart, pretty expected, I think. Again, I think if Xander Ferguson had gone, I think that Tyke Furlong probably shifts off to the bench and Will Stewart probably drops out. They then got Ollie Chesham, Ben Earl. Ollie Chesham can obviously cover lock as well as a bit of flank. Ben Earl probably coming in mostly at eighth man there. And then they've gone with Mitchell, Marcus Smith, and Bundy Aki. So you got a Marcus Smith who kind of allows that you can play at 15 and at 10, which means that Bundy Aki can come in at the centres. And, you can then shift, I suppose, Hugo Keenan to the wing. I would have been quite tempted to have gone with the Blair Kinghorn at 23, to be honest. And you could have actually had a Bundy Aki and a Blair Kinghorn, because Bundy Aki could have gone to in the centres. You can actually play a Blair Kinghorn at 10 if you wanted to. But I think Marcus Smith is always going to be probably involved with the fact that he covers fullback as well, given the fact that they are short of few fullbacks. It's a proper bench. It really is. I mean, the amount of experience and class involved. I mean, to have Bundy Aki, for example, coming off the bench in the second half, that's ridiculous. Marcus Smith is a game changer. When players get a bit tired, he can be a game breaker as well. So very excited to see how this bench goes. It's a very good squad at the end of the day. I mean, this is the whole thing. You look at a British and Irish Lions side, and you're always going to be picking sort of pieces about, I think this player ahead of this player. But I mean, you're talking about the number one starter for a nation versus the number one starter in another nation. And so it's, the cream of the cream, and it's always going to be not much in it. Jack Morgan versus Tom Curry. I would have gone Jack Morgan, but you're not exactly losing quality by going with a Tom Curry. I just feel it's a bit sad that I think some of the players who haven't really pitched up on tour haven't, really been rewarded for that. And I'm speaking about Jack Morgan in particular. I mean, Duane van der Merwe, for example, has also scored tries for absolute fun so far on the tour. Misses out for James Lowe. I do think that James Lowe with that boot, for example, far more versatile player. I think has more strings to his bow than Duane van der Merwe is more or less just an out-and-out finisher. But he'll sit there and feel a little bit aggrieved because he'll sit there saying, well, my job is to score tries, and I've been scoring tries. Mac Hansen as well. He is got an X factor and phenomenal off-the-ball work rate. He'll probably also be feeling quite hard done by. I thought Blake King was probably the form fullback during the Six Nations. He doesn't make 23 either. What for me will be interesting to see is what this team looks like next week, and whether we might see and what the midweek team looks like. So I think there's a couple of players who have joined, but I think we might not see a Jack Morgan on Tuesday, for example. We might come off the bench because I think we might see him in the second test. Obviously, it'll also depend on what happens with injuries and stuff like that during this weekend. But that is the team. We'll do an official preview tomorrow. Look at the Wallaby side as well. So let me know what you think about this team and what sort of point of differences there are down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.